Um, so just want to mention that this call is being recorded. And we place our recording on a YouTube channel. And if you don't want to be recorded, you may want to drop off now. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Kumar. Kumar, take it away, man. Floor is yours. Please share your screen.
Good morning. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
We can see it.
Okay. Let me make it full screen. Navid, did you say the Ignite link that you want me to cover? Or?
Oh, I will paste it, man. Please continue.
Okay. Okay, sure. I'll go ahead then. So good morning, good afternoon. Today we will be talking about the Azure Arc, some of the latest features since the time we rolled out a year and a half ago. So my name is Kumar Alamraju. I'm a solutions architect in Microsoft for working with customers on infrastructure. So the agenda for today's session was I'll spend few minutes to give you an overview of Azure Arc, what it is and what kind of use cases it will resolve for customers. Then just to accelerate the Azure Arc, our development team, our program management team came up with some jumpstart guide and how you could certainly leverage it to kind of kickstart for any development purposes or proof of concepts and everything. So those are the things that I would like to focus on in today's session. So moving on, so when we think about customers today, we have some customers who are going and beginning or already far along their IT modernization journey, right? So they have started taking their old on-prem applications and packaging them up in containers, for example, or moving them to serverless. I think that some of the buzzwords like containers or serverless, or taking that some stuff that's already in the on-prem and moving it to different data centers like some of the public clouds, or maybe even multi-cloud approach that some of the customers take, whether it's Amazon, Google, or Azure, or anything for that matter, right? So as these applications continue to diversify, the different workloads in which we are managing them, it continues to multiply. And the challenge is governing and keeping an eye on all these resources continues to become difficult for customers. So at Microsoft, our development has taken a closer look at this problem and figure out what we can do to bring some control back, right? If we have some resources in the respective cloud, in our case Azure, then we have visibility into it. But if we have resources in other clouds in on-prem, then we have no visibility into it, right? So you got some stuff running in on-premise for various reasons, for compliance reasons or sovereignty reasons, or the customers have already spent on the capital expenditure, right? And you have some stuff running in other public clouds too, right? So how do we go and bring all these together in one view so that we continue to have a good idea of all these applications we are running and managing them, right? So that's the problem that Microsoft is trying to solve in Azure Public Cloud, right? So the purpose of the goal of Azure Arc is to kind of manage resources that are not running in Azure, so that just to give you a single pane of glass, whether that's running in Azure or in on-premise or in other public clouds. So what you see here is, if we have deployed any resources in Azure, so you are going to have a similar problem, because you could have a one Azure subscription or multiple Azure subscriptions, or if it's a bigger organization, you could have a multiple tenants too, for that matter. So you need to make sure you can govern these centrally. But in Azure, what you see is the control plane is we call Azure Resource Manager. and that is the central plane entry point for Azure. So what you see here is you can interact with Azure from Azure portal or some CLI or SDKs, whatnot. But whatever call that you make, initially the Azure Resource Manager accepts the call. Let's start with Azure portal. So you're going to ask, let's say you are trying to create some virtual machines or databases or anything. ARM, which is Azure Resource Manager, is the central component responsible for actually accepting your request and processing it. Depending upon what you are trying to do, you may set some RBAC controls, resource-based access controls, right, to make sure who has access to it, who is creating these resources, right, and accessing these resources, tagging an inventory, which resource belongs to which department. This is really going to be very, very challenging in the long run, especially managing quite an enterprise environment, right? But again, that's really a great story for Azure if you keep all these things in Azure, right? But when we go and do things like onboarding these other resources like Azure Monitor or Security Center, we can make it a one-click experience, right? It's all great story for Azure. But what about the stuff that's not running in Azure though? The stuff you got in on-prem and other clouds, those resources today are running in your own environment that you control, right? But they are kind of disconnected from Azure. So if you are looking for a way where you wanted to really have a single pane of glass, then that's where Azure Arc comes into play, and we can really give you this visibility and fix those problems for you. So yeah, so this is an extension of the previous slide. Essentially, as an entry point into the Azure, you could manage using Azure Arc. You can manage Azure resources, but you can also manage the resources running in on-premises and other public clouds too. So that's what I kind of highlighted in the previous slide too. So yeah, so let's talk about, so that's what Azure Arc is trying to do as a whole, trying to connect the things that are running in on-prem or in other clouds and project them into Azure Resource Manager so that Azure is aware of them. Once Azure is aware of them, they can actually start providing the same kind of management, monitoring, governance capabilities that you have in Azure today, right? Although they are running outside of Azure, you could actually project them into Azure, and we can, as soon as they're projected into Azure, we can do all sorts of governance, compliance, tagging, policy management, and all those things. We can do that for you, right? So what we do is today we kind of support, for example, so let's talk about what those scenarios are. So when we first started our journey with Azure Arc or hybrid management, we started with providing support for Azure Arc enabled servers. And since then, we started supporting for databases and actually in Kubernetes too. So, and then this footprint continues to expand actually. Yeah, so initially we started with managing the servers, whether it could be physical servers, or we support Linux and Windows, right? But we don't really care. They could be running your on-premise. They could be running in AWS or GCP. So we don't really care about the dependencies. All we care about is the operating system. It could be the databases. It could be on open source Kubernetes, or it could be running in OpenShift or GCP or AWS for that matter, right? And then very recently we started supporting this Azure Arc for some of these PaaS services offering, like run your apps anywhere. It doesn't need to be in Azure. It could be Azure App Service or Azure Functions or Logic Apps. They could run in in an on-premise world too, but you could still expose them using Azure Arc. So that is something that we recently introduced in the last couple of months, and this continues to grow. And there's a long list, but I'll only just touch upon high-level things. You could expose the data services to or machine learning for that matter. All these things can be exposed using Azure Arc. But let me touch upon one area before I actually talk about the ArcBox. So as I mentioned in the prior slide, let's start with Azure Arc. So what we can do, the first thing we focus on is inventory and awareness of those assets. When you project resources on Azure Arc, you get visibility into the operating system, just the fact that they exist, right? You can use tags to coordinate which department they belong to, all sorts of things you can do, tagging and everything. Lastly, we can start applying the Azure policy to those machines, right? Previously, to get visibility into previously to get compliance status of a machine that's running in Azure, you can use Azure policy, but that wasn't available for any resources running outside of Azure, right? So that's what our customers asked for. Hey, how can I, ensure some of these security tools or tagging or policy? But because of the fact we didn't understand where they were, we were unable to do that. But with Azure Arc Agent, we are now able to get visibility and start editing the settings of your VMs running in your on-premise or in Azure and other clouds. Just giving you some sort of a single pane of glass, right? So now just to summarize, you can onboard a wide variety of Azure servers, including Azure Arc, Windows, Linux, bare metal, could be running anywhere. And you can organize these servers and apply governance across all these servers and apply role-based control access for that matter. And it could be any of those things, right? So these are some of the things that you might be doing this already in Azure in terms of setting those governance policies or role-based access controls, but something that's unavailable. But we have an Azure Arc agent. Once that's installed, that's projected into the Azure control plane, and we will be able to set up all those governance policies. So similar to the Azure Arc, we offer a lot of flexibility to you based on the specific needs. We support a wide range of Kubernetes distributions. It could be an open source, something like a Rancher or any of those, or it could be those servers Kubernetes running in OpenShift or EKS or GCP or whatever it is, right? We support different. As I mentioned, I would like to continue to reiterate. We don't really care where it's running as long as the appropriate agent is installed. That's completely projected to the Azure. That's what it matters, right? You can connect all these clusters to Azure and start deploying these applications to these clusters using, for example, in a GitOps-based model. Additionally, you can enable cluster health monitoring with Azure Monitor. That's a big thing, right? Because you will be able to monitor not only Azure AKS clusters, but you could actually monitor the Kubernetes clusters running in elsewhere too. The thing is, you could monitor those clusters running in, for example, GCP or AWS or VMware. But the idea is to kind of consolidate all the monitoring aspect of it, the management, the governance, and everything. That's a huge the advantage of this Azure Arc. That's what customers are looking for. I have a valid reason to run these workloads in the different clouds, which is fine. We are giving that flexibility, but in terms of the management, visibility, control is what Azure Arc is trying to solve. Similar to Azure Arc servers and Azure Arc Kubernetes, you could also do Azure Arc data services like SQL Server or Postgres and everything, right? But I just would like to stop there because I just wanted to give just a 10 minutes overview of what this Azure Arc is going to do, which is it's already being giving just to go back. It gives you a single control plane to manage all your resources, whether it's running in Azure or it's running in other public clouds or on-prem, wherever they are. Right. As soon as the Azure Arc agent is installed, they are fully projected into the Azure, and you are good to go. And then you can apply a lot of governance policies, RBAC controls, tagging. You can use one of our security features like Azure Policy or Azure Security Defender tools and all those things. So moving on, so what I would like to focus on today was essentially the Jumpstart guide that we introduced in a few months ago. You may or may not have seen it. You can access this from the link that I showed you here. But what it does is it provides you or anyone, if you're an architect in your organization, or or if you need to show some sort of a demonstration or hosting an event, it allows you to give you a zero to hero experience scenarios, right? It's fully automated. You don't need to really kind of write scripts and everything. And then off the shelf scenarios, it could be, for example, you have some servers running in on-premise or VMware or Amazon, or it could be you're mainly interested in Kubernetes, or you are mainly interested in database services, right? So this Jumpstart guide really allows you to focus on what exactly you can do depending upon your use case. It's completely flexible, which I'll show you shortly. So for example, if you guys haven't noticed it, but this is where you could see, hope you could still see my screen. So you're going to start here. So this is the Azure Arc Jumpstart guide. So we encourage customers to kind of take a look at it. These are some of the scenarios. So you could start with, if you're interested in managing and monitoring the physical servers or virtual machines, you can just look at it. Or if you are running in a different public cloud, we kind of show you what you can do to project resources from Amazon or Google Cloud. You see the Kubernetes, it could be any servers that, so this gives you a Jumpstart guide. So you don't have to really, as I mentioned, if you have some servers running in VMware or GCP, you just come here, just follow the instructions. That's all you have to do. So you don't need to really, Google search or maybe, Stack Overflow and everything, but, we kind of make this available to you so that you're off the, get started quickly, right? So this is a GitHub repository that's available to all the customers. They can certainly take advantage of it. But then our engineering took it to the next level. That is the next one is the ArcBox. So what it does is it gives you some sort of a sandbox environment, right? In the ArcBox, what we do is we let you deploy the on-premise servers, on-premise Kubernetes, on-premise data services, lots of things. So all you have to do is just run an ARM template that we provide to you. And then you could simply run this in your Azure subscription. It doesn't need any high level, elevated privileges. It's very, very ideal if you want to run a proof of concept to demonstrate the value of Azure Arc to your senior management. And you can even demonstrate, in any of the events that you are hosting, or maybe anything for that matter. Or you can just do a quick testing, and you can always delete these resources. So that's a great thing. So initially we started with the Azure Arc, but then we want to make it easy to the customer. So we came up with the Jumpstart guide. But then later on we thought, okay, let me just give you a sandbox environment that you could easily play with in your subscription, and you are good to go, right? So let me just tell you how you can access this ArcBox. So again, this can be accessed from the same page which I showed you. So if you go to this page, the home page, so here you should see these Jumpstart scenarios, and you see the Jumpstart ArcBox. Okay, so we provide you a clear-cut instructions on how you can really deploy this in your environment, right? So you see, and this architecture, it's going to look like it's going to provision some VMs, some Kubernetes, some database services, and on top of it, it creates an Azure monitor, some policies, some Defender, Sentinel, and all those things. So it's giving you a full package for you to really play with, right? So that way you don't have to really worry about manually deploying all these resources. So we, as part of this ArcBox, you can deploy Linux VMs or Windows VMs. You could also deploy the Rancher Kubernetes, open source Kubernetes. That way you don't have dependency on running in Amazon or Google for that matter. And then you could also deploy some database servers, for example, PostgreSQL and everything, right? But we also clearly mention this is going to incur some costs on your subscription, so be aware of it. But as soon as you are done demonstrating it, you can turn off all those VMs, or you can completely delete it, and you can always come back and reprovision it. It's very simple. And so on this page, you will see something like this: deploy to Azure. That's all you have to do. So we give you very clear-cut instructions. Make sure you have all these. You create a service principal beforehand. This is available in these respective regions. So these all you have to do. Deploy to Azure. So if you come here, it will ask you to provide your subscription, some resource group. That's all you have to do. It will take half hour to fully provision this whole control plane of all these resources. So just kickstart the process and just step out for a lunch break and come back within few minutes. Your ArcBox environment is ready. So let me show you what I did. So this is my ArcBox environment. Let me just show you. It's in my resource group. You see all these things are provisioned, right? So it provisions a bunch of virtual machines, and then it created some databases. It projected those resources to Azure portal, Azure Arc, right? All those things are done. All you have to do is just go to that page and fill up this wizard. Within a few minutes, within half hour, you are good to go, right? And then once you are there, so let me tell you how we are doing this. So we create a bunch of those virtual machines. So you just log in. One of the VMs is ArcBox client. So when you RDP into this, it has this Hyper-V manager. So in the Hyper-V manager, you'll see I created a bunch of these on-premise servers like ArcBox, SQL Server, Ubuntu VM, Windows VM. So these are the ones that we are projecting to Azure. So this kind of simulating your on-premise environment, right? So it gives you a good overview of what's going to look like, because we don't want to really change any of your existing environment. Instead, you could really kickstart and play with it, and you can demonstrate or showcase the value of how Azure Arc will really fit to it. And this is really a game changer. Since the time we rolled it out, a lot of architects or developers or IT people have used it, and we continue to see a large adoption of it. And our engineering team has continued to add more features to this ArcBox. So as you see it, we are right now we are simulating with a couple of VMs, couple of database servers, and then if you come back here, now let me just go back. Yeah, hang on a sec. Yeah, so once you're in that resource group, look for something like log analytics workspace. So that's where the monitoring comes into the play. So you see this, my log analytics workspace. So once you come here, we created some custom workbooks for you. And if you click on this ArcBook workbook, so this is where you could really see when I said single pane of glass. So you could imagine how much compute it is, what kind of, sorry, not this one. Yeah. How many Arc servers I have, how many Kubernetes clusters I have, right? So we just give you a consolidated view of what it is. And from here, this is my inventory. As I mentioned in my slide deck, we can really project your inventory as soon as we have visibility into it. And then you can, from here, you can do just monitoring, right? This monitoring is really great. It will clearly tell you. One sec. Yeah. So these are all my Arc servers. For example, it has a Linux VM. It tells me my CPU utilization, or this. Again, these are on-premise servers. Imagine how beautiful this is. Actually, Azure is monitoring your on-premise servers, or it could be running in any of the public cloud. It could be AWS or Google, right? So we are actually managing on your behalf, monitoring, managing, tagging, compliance, whatnot. So you get a really good consolidated view of all those things, right? Tells you the CPU usage. And from here, if you wanted to, you could actually do the patch management too for some of these servers. So if you see, for example, you clearly tell, obvious reasons, it's picking up all my stuff. Yeah. So if you see, so it tells me, are my servers up to date? Are they out of compliance and all those things, right? It also tells me some of the VMs are up to date, some of them are out of compliance. So you can just go and see on all those things, and you can make the decision whether do you want to patch them or update them. Because using this, you can use Azure Update Management to patch the servers. You can look for SQL health checks, whatnot. You can do all sorts of things. So this is what we did as part of the ArcBox, which gives you a single view of a sandbox environment, which lets you really play with it, demonstrate it, and do some sort of accelerate your POC for that matter. And you can stop the resources to save on compute costs. Alternatively, you can completely delete it and restart the and reprovision the ArcBox, like as I mentioned here. Just come back, just reprovision it in your environment if that's what you wanted to do. But this shows the value of the Azure Arc. That is what I'm trying to demonstrate in today's Powerline session. And then one thing I wanted to mention is, so you can just go to this GitHub repo. This is same. It's easy to remember, Azure Arc Jumpstart.io. From there, you will find it. Yeah, I think I already demonstrated. There's a lot of resources that you will really be able to take advantage of it. If you are interested in a specific resource, for example, only you're interested in the servers, not Kubernetes, not databases, that's okay. Or if you are only interested in the Kubernetes, you can do that, right? So a lot of stuff that's coming up. We will be making a lot of announcements in the Ignite too about Azure Arc. So please consider registering yourself and then attend one of those Azure Arc sessions. But last but not least, you should, there are a couple of people in our organization, Leo, Kamrat, and Dale, and of course many more in our product group that they kind of invented this, kind of initiated this effort. So I'm just kind of presenting their content, but you'll find a lot of YouTube videos from Leo. So please consider watching this YouTube channel and everything. But yeah, so that's pretty much it that I wanted to cover in today's call. Happy to answer any questions you guys may have. And of course, Naveen will be sharing the slide deck too. But if you just search for this jumpbox.org, this is the overview page. So that's where you can just go and can just check it out if you haven't already. But yeah.
Actually, Kumar, there's a request if you can post some of these links in the chat window.
Yeah, I will. Yes, I'll do that.
Okay.
Yeah, this is accessible to everyone. It's not an internal repo. I pasted the main page, but I'll also be this thing. Yeah, and then very recently we started supporting for Azure Arc services for some of these. It's on public documentation too. In addition to Azure Arc for servers, for database services, and for Kubernetes, we also started supporting for this NEL, run your applications anywhere kind of concept that we are coming up with. You can run Azure functions or logic apps and all those things. And you can project through Azure Arc. So that's really a killer solution from Microsoft. We would highly encourage to take there's a lot of reference architectures out there too. But I think this page will give you the stuff that you are looking for. We are also asking customer community to give their ideas of what exactly you would like to see. Definitely they're open to the feedback. But I think these two things will certainly give you a head start. Did I paste those links? Yeah, I did. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? folks. Thank you everyone for joining, and Kumar, thank you very much for this session. Really informative. And as usual, we'll post the video, and in the description there's a link. There will be a link to the slides from today, and hope to see everybody next week for another session of Azure Power Lunch. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.